All right, what is this going to look like when your group gets out there? There's a link to this Google form which one of your team members can have on their phone to kind of keep things on track and make sure you're getting all of these 7 images. Don't rush through this. I've done this a million times and it took me a little while. Set up the shot, double check the settings. If I'm in a hurry, then I'm going to make a mistake. And the last thing you want to do is get into your post-production and find out that there's an image you didn't get or that you did it backwards or something along those lines. So do read the form carefully. And speaking of getting it backwards, I did the first 2 backwards. So I'm going to look at them on my camera and you'll see that they are just a little bit backwards. So let's take a look on the camera. Now your group's going to be taking pictures out there in the field, if you will. Manual exposure, and then dialing in the shutter, aperture, ISO as directed by the form. You're going to want to take a look at those images and you're going to need to keep some of that information in that Google form. How do you take a look at those images when you're done? There's a play button at the lower right hand corner of the camera. When I hit play, I see my images and I can cycle through those images again using the left right, I call them the joystick arrows over here. So let's start with one of the first images that I got. This is from the outside of the building and it is very overexposed. It's too bright, there's too much light. I want to see the exact information of the camera settings, so I'm going to hit this info button on the left hand corner. That's going to tell me the shutter speed, which I was asked to do, the ISO, which I was asked to set, and then the aperture, which I got to pick, and that's very overexposed. I can see that this is image number 20, and if I happen to hit info a second time, I actually get even more information. I get this little box which is called a histogram, and then I see it flashing in all of the areas that are overexposed. So this camera is actually giving us a lot of information on this image. Of course, you can see the white balance is auto, the focus mode, and the size of the image, and so forth. But that's what happens when you cycle through the info button. This is really the one we need to see here. Here's one that's a little bit underexposed, and I can see what my aperture is here. It's a bigger number for underexposed. That's going to take your brain a second to get used to, and that's okay. Take the time, understand that it's a little bit backwards. It is backwards, and you're going to have to think about that. So the smaller the number, the wider the opening on aperture. The larger the number, the smaller the opening, the darker the image. And here's one that the camera said is well exposed, and I may need to get that phone video exposed. So those are the aperture shots. Now here are the shutter speed shots indoors. Again, I've set the aperture and the ISO as requested, and I've dialed it down to a really slow shutter speed, and you can see that it's blurry. Again, image number 23. A little bit faster shutter speed, changing the ISO, and I get a sharp focus as I was walking. I was not frozen, I was walking. I was walking with the confidence of a man who knows the exposure triangle. That's how I was walking. Try it sometime, you'll enjoy that. Now let's get into ISO that's too high. ISO 6400. If I actually zoom in to these images using this little plus button up here, well, now I've got the exposure too low. Plus button up here will let me zoom into those images and really see some of the details. And as I zoom into those, I can see, particularly in these spots where it's dark, I can see that's called grain. That's really grungy and it doesn't look very good. Not good, no good. Let's get it set so that the ISO is correct. So instead of 6400, let's go over to the next image, ISO 100. I was able to set it at 100 because I had a lot of nice daylight coming through. Now if I zoom into those blackened lines on the screen, I see a nice crisp, non-grainy, shadowy area of that image. So that gives you an idea of what it's like to have ISO that's set too high. That's the grain that you want to keep out of your videos and pictures. That's what it's going to look like when your group is out there shooting. And again, take your time. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. If it works for Navy SEALs, it also works for digital media, video, and photo professionals. All right, keep it up. Thanks so much.